So for the first round, I want to start, Prof Nalapat, with China. As you mentioned, China wants to be, and it's very clear that China wants to be the new unipolar hegemon. It's very clear from its actions. 20, 30 years ago, Deng Xiaoping is supposed to have, the Chinese premier is supposed to have said, walk with a stick, but talk softly. Now they are not talking softly anymore, and they are beginning to use the stick as well. So China is the new proverbial 5,000 pound, maybe not a gorilla, but a dragon. So in terms of how India as a nation, not just the political aspect, economic, social, think tanks, research, all of that, how are we handling China? Do you see a change that's happening? What are the things that are still missing? How should we go about it to make sure that, when we want to play that leadership role, we don't get handicapped by the fact that the gap between India and China is too huge? Your thoughts?
I'd like to say that I fully agree with Ram that from the very beginning, for last century, the Chinese Communist Party has focused on making China once again the Middle Kingdom. I have always said that the CCP is a party of Han nationalism. Han is the dominant, ethno-centered, culture-centered community in China. Now, the point is very simple. We have to beat China at our game and to an extent at their game. And what does that mean? For example, I'll tell you, whether it's the Soviet Union, whether it's anywhere else, there is an atmosphere of freedom, a freedom of the mind, if I may say so, that promotes research, that promotes the accumulation of knowledge. Now, in the Soviet Union, for example, if you were a space scientist or a nuclear scientist, you had a wide degree of freedom. In India, it's not an accident that the greatest successes of the government of India have been in the space and atomic departments that have always been headed by domain specialists rather than by generalists. Ram was talking about basically going below, punching below your weight. Well, the reality is that is the colonial mindset. And the bureaucracy is, after all, inherited from the colonial bureaucracy. Our laws, our procedures, a lot of our system comes from the colonial period. And in that colonial period, let's not forget, we are talking about British law in India for slaves, for colonial subjects. The law in Britain for British people was very different, is very different. I mean, from the law that the British had for their colonial servants. So the first point is, today what is happening in Xi Jinping's China is that there is no freedom of thought at all. Whether you're a scientist, whether you're a technologist, whatever you are, you have got to obey what the party core wants you to obey, which is the office of General Secretary. That is where we can have an advantage. If we promote genuine freedom of thought, genuine freedom of action, and this will mean listening to views that we don't like. As I said, I was surprised at some of the negative reactions about from people I know about some of the views expressed in the items that have been talked about. The fact is, whether you agree or not, the right to disagree, the right to have a different view is central to the knowledge economy. That is where India can score. We have to rise in the knowledge economy. And may I say, not as a system, not as a state, but as people, we have done that. You go to any, whether it's the chip, whether it's a computer chip, whether it is a clean technology, any kind of science and technological innovation, you will find Indian brains very important in it across the world. That has got to be harnessed in our system. And it can only happen if we have an approach which is all of civil society. No, if you have a belief that only an IAS officer understands the domestic situation in India, only an IPS officer understands security in India, only an IFS officer understands foreign policy in India, you are actually losing the benefit of the vibrant civil society that India has had across millennia. And this is what I would like to say. This is an opportunity much bigger than the opportunity of the 1950s. It's an opportunity that we must take into our own hands. And so far, I would like to say, we seem to be doing so, but also we seem not to be doing so. And I would like to see a much better understanding, a much better realization on the part of people in government about this opportunity, and ensure that they are, in a mindset to understand itself, to understand its needs, to understand its dangers, and embrace this chance. Then, as Ram correctly said, by the next 8 or 9 years, India will emerge not only as a great power, but if I may say so, one of the top 3 powers in the world in terms of not only economics, but in terms of geopolitical influence.